Hey everyone, welcome back to the Distinct Mastering YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing automation in Ableton specifically, but this works in any DAW. I'm going to be talking about how automation can help you achieve better mixes, ways you can use automation, and different and various tips for automating things in Ableton. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's talk about the concept of automation. First, automation became a thing when DAWs came about, and if you remember, maybe if you're as old as I am in this business, you know, I used to have a Control 24, which was a DigiDesign console, and it was one of the first kind of consoles in that world. Was really just a controller for Pro Tools that had automated faders, and every time you loaded up a session, the faders would immediately revert back to where they were. The cool thing was with that board was you can touch and write automation. So if you were adjusting your faders as an old mix engineer would, it would record your moves. Obviously these days in the digital audio workstations, a lot of automation is drawn in by hand. That doesn't mean though that you can't automate with a controller. Even if you have a keyboard, you can MIDI map the automation that you're trying to write and control it with a knob or any type of slider switch, whatever you prefer. Just get creative with that. So the concept behind automation is to automate things over time. And when I mean automate, that's to create change, but let it do the work for you automatically in layman's terms. The advantages to using automation in your mixes and productions is that you will have sounds that evolve instead of being static. You know, a lot of basic or beginner productions kind of have your very static sounds and they're not automating things. If you're a synthesis user, think of automation as if modulating the synth. Now, if you know what that means, you might use a LFO or an envelope to modulate the synth over time. And that is similar to what automation is doing in your DAW. Now, you can automate lots of things. Let's start with a very basic application. You can automate volume. Another very basic application might be to automate pans. So you might pan something from left, then to right, and back and forth. Another example might be to automate the filter cutoff of an instrument bus or a sound or a bass, anything really. You can automate the filter so that it's opening up over time. Another thing you could automate might be synthesis parameters or synthesizer parameters that you have. Say, maybe you want to automate the cutoff, maybe you want to automate the LFO to speed up. You might automate the pitch so that you get a rising effect. There's lots of different things that you can do with automation. And then you can combine automation and create wacky different things going on. So let's talk about how we can get automation working in our DAW. Okay, I've got an Ableton session loaded up here, and I just want to show you a basic automation strategy to start. One of the most basic strategies would be to automate volume. Say for example, you can literally just click on the volume and click and draw. It's that simple. I can just go like this, and now this is gonna fade down. Now, if you caught an old video of mine on the Ableton utility, I'm gonna show you why it's not good to automate right on the volume, because then you lose control and you have to turn your automation arm back on. So I don't like to automate the volume directly on the track in Ableton. What I like to do is I like to use a utility, or sometimes I like to use the FabFilter Simplon. So you might want to go back and check that video out too. I'll leave you a link to both of those videos down below. But see, I've loaded up a utility and now I have the gain. So I'll typically automate the gain. And maybe I want to automate this up, this instrument, and if I just hold Alt, I can create curves by holding Alt and clicking. Another thing you could do is you could right click and you could do shapes just like that. So now what I've done, and I'll go ahead and play you this, is this instrument bus is automating up on the gain of this utility, which is essentially the volume of the whole bus. So this is an extremely simple application of automation. And over here, it's getting louder and louder and louder till it gets to full volume at this break. Let's talk about another type of automation that you can use. Let's automate some parameters like EQs. Perhaps I have right here on this ARP, you can see that I have this EQ move. Maybe if I just turn this on, and you see because I hit A and my automation is on, or just hit this button right here, you can see the moves. And if I click one of these, the automation type is changing, or you can select them here. Now, what if I wanted to take this ARP and maybe automate this filter up over time? So I could do something like this. Let's take this, and this is on and off. That's not what I want. So we want EQ8 frequency, just like that. And we'll just take this and go like this and clean this up. So now you see this EQ is moving over time, introducing this ARP sound. Let's try that with, let's look at something else that I've got going on. So as you can see here, I've got on these leads, I've got these Simplons that I love to use, and you can see some wacky automation moves here with these. You see that's coming down, and what's happening is, bring this over here for you, you see that it's moving. And so that is an example of automating a filter. You can use an EQ, you can use a filter plugin, it really doesn't matter. You're basically automating or modulating the volume over time, just as if you would if you were working with a synthesizer. Another thing you can do with automation, you can get really creative here. You can automate effect parameters. So not only can you automate the send level to an effect, let's say on this lead, you can see a bunch of automation here on these parameters. So you could see that I'm automating to some of these delays and things, and it's automating these over time as well into these effects. And that's giving me more movement over time because the automation parameters are increasing that effect as this breakdown is progressing. So I suggest you know, with automation, one of the things that I suggest you do is you start small. Try basic moves like I showed you first, volume, you know, cutoffs to filters, send levels to effects, maybe delays and reverbs. See what you like before you start trying to get more and more complicated with this stuff. Now, another thing that I can do is I've got this plate reverb here, and maybe throughout my track, I want to automate some of the parameters of this reverb. I could do that. You know, maybe if I want to automate over time the diffusion, for example. So maybe during the breakdowns, I could turn up the diffusion, and that's changing the reverb over time. Maybe, you know, I'll do the same thing here. And let's play this now for you. But I'm going to give this an extreme. Let's try to take something else like the mix value, which is actually, oh wait, no, that's not going to work. Let's bring the plugin up here. Okay, so here's the Lexicon 224. Here's the plate reverb. Let's try to take the, you know, you could do something like this where maybe the treble decay comes down, right? Oops, that's not the treble decay. So let's try to take something like the treble decay, and maybe during this section it comes down over time, which would be this way. So you can see I've automated the effect parameter of this reverb. So now as this beat is playing, the treble decay is coming down. Not something I would probably do very commonly, but maybe a different way to look at it would be maybe during the breakdown the treble decay goes up, and during the beat you want your treble decay down, something like this per se. You know, you could have these hard, sharp edges over different sections of your beat, and now you're going to have instantly more reverb and decay time on the treble. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with automation if you really put your head to it. Another thing you can do is automate parameters of a synth, like I said earlier. So let's take a look at this pad. I've got repro here. And as you can see, you know, I can pick the repro, and I have stereo width, device. So there's not a lot of settings I can automate on this one. Show automated parameters, pulse width. So check this out. If I were to take this and just change this over time, you can see the pulse width here is moving. Now this synth doesn't seem to give a lot of parameters that can be automated, but you can use a MIDI learn feature to map this to any controller you have. Now if you're curious on how to do this, I suggest that you check out my Ableton guide. I'll leave you a link down below. Let's take a look at another synth that might automatically give you a lot more parameters. For example, if I was to open up an Ableton synth, you're going to be able to automate anything with that. So for example, here's operator, and we're just going to go ahead and just, as you can see, if I turn on the automation parameters. So all I have to do to automate something in this operator is turn on the automation. It's right now set to none. Just select operator, and now you can see I could literally automate anything on this synth. And this is a great way to start creating lots of different effects. Another thing that you can do if you start to automate a lot of parameters is you can select this plus button and open up different automation lanes of the different various automation things you've done. So if you've got a lot of automation going on in one track, you could have all four of them open so you can see the relationship between them. Let's do something, for example, so you can see this. So if I just quickly automate the device on and off just like this, now I have that lane. And then if I select operator and I want to automate the spread, and I open this up, I can just hit the plus sign, and now I've got the spread. And let's say I want to automate now the EQ. Let's say I want to automate the first frequency, and boom, there it is. Just hit the plus sign again, and now you can see I've got these lanes opening up per track to create automation moves that are much more complex. Now the purpose of this video is not to get into the complexities of automation in this regard. I'm going to leave you to be creative in that, and just use your creativity to start trying to automate parameters and mess around with things. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to leave you with a few tips regarding automation. Number one, utilize common automation tactics and plan your automation moves. As you're producing, try to think about what you might automate. And then you can get into your automation later. Get your core theme out and done first before you start trying to automate. But have an idea of what you might automate. I guarantee as you start to use automation, if you're a beginner, you're going to automate a lot of the same parameters on a lot of your productions. It's just going to become common. So definitely maybe add some of those to your template. Tip number two, experiment with automation in small steps. It can be a little daunting at first. You don't need to try to automate 18 parameters of your synthesizer. Start by automating, like I said earlier. Start with the volume. Start with panning. Start with a filter. Try simple things, simple moves. Another thing that you can automate is MIDI, and that is another way to give more expression. You can automate things such as the modulation or expression of MIDI, and you can get varieties of the synths changing over time. Say if you have your mod wheel, automate that. Even when you're recording yourself playing with a mod wheel, you're recording the automation. So experiment and play around a little bit. Another tip for you is automation can be used as a creative tool. It can help enhance your mix and make things sound a little bit more realistic. For example, maybe you automate the velocity or how the volume of a hi-hat over time. So it's quiet in the beginning of the track, it gets louder. That can emulate the style of a drummer. Or one of the things I like to automate, and I talk about cleaning up vocals in a previous video, I'll leave you a link down below. I automate words, individual vocal hits and things that, maybe the word gets loud or the phrase gets loud. I'll automate those sections so that the vocals sit nicely in the mix. So automation is your friend, and just don't get bombarded and overwhelmed by it, but just start small and build from there. Last but not least, you can automate a lot of different parameters in the mix itself. You might automate BPM changes in Ableton, for example, which is a very unique one. I've done that in DJ mixes, and I show you how to do that in my DJ mix video. I'll leave you a link down below. You can automate all kinds of things. So get creative and just have fun with it. I hope this video helps you out. If you have any questions about automation in any DAW or specifically Ableton, please shoot me a comment down below. My name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering, and I help people with their mixing and mastering. If you need help with your mastering and you want a free stereo mastered sample, check the link down below. I offer first-time clients one free stereo mastered sample. Please make sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell notification, which will keep you up to date with future videos. It really does help me out to keep creating these, so just drop me a comment below if you're feeling the video, and thanks again.